And we are live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of the Gaming Perspective. I won't even call it a special episode. We'll just call it a special in general. So I got my hands on Crackdown 3 early. As a lot of people saw, I posted my review earlier today. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity since the game is just going to release tomorrow or tonight, I guess, technically, for a lot of people. If anyone had any questions or concerns about the game in general, I could answer them. So I decided to bring Sam along for the ride because he had a lot of questions in regards to the game. So Sam, why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Hey guys, you all know me. If you're tuning into us, you know who I am. Co-editor at Tick, good friend of Nick. Yeah, let's get the show on the road. We're here to talk about Crackdown 3. Tomorrow, just a few hours from now, this thing is finally coming out. First announced at E3 2014. This is a big deal. Wouldn't you say, Nick? Like, this is a big deal.
This is a big deal because this closes the end. This is legitimately the physical end of the Matric era of games, officially. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really interesting going forward. And it's amazing that this game finally came out. Of all the games that got announced back in 2013, 2014, of all the games I thought would never come out, it was this one. So it's been surreal. I'm not going to lie. When it first started installing on my Xbox, it was a really surreal moment to go, I'm finally going to play this. And to play it early ahead of everybody else, it was just like, whew, weird.
Now, let's get a bit of background info. Are you a Crackdown series fan? Did you play the original? Did you play Crackdown 2? Anything like that?
Nope. I've never touched a Crackdown game in my life, actually.
Wow. Okay.
I was going to play the original before I did the review because they offered it free a few days before the review codes went out. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to get burned out on open world games. I didn't want to burn myself out on the original Crackdown and then play Crackdown 3 and be open world burned out for it. So I decided, well, I'll go in blind and see what to expect. A lot of people compared it to the Saints Row series, which I'm a massive fan of. So I was like, just go in blind and hope for the best.
Okay, all right. So no prior history with the series. That's interesting. So how long did you let's start with this. How long did it take you to beat the game?
Okay, so officially on my game time that the Xbox actually recorded, it took me 12 hours to beat the campaign, give or take.
All right.
And that's with completing a lot of the side activities. I'm not talking the races or anything like that, but that's like eliminating all the enemy assets, like so removing enemy territories, everything else. I basically wiped all the enemy targets off the map and then finished off the final boss kind of deal.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty interesting. And just to be clear here, for anyone who didn't edit your article, so everyone who isn't me, and anyone who hasn't read your article yet, you just played the campaign, right? Like, you can't give any impressions on Wrecking Zone, the multiplayer. We have no idea about any of that. We're just talking campaign, right?
Yeah, because, see, the thing is it was really weird, and I'm going to talk somewhat candidly, but keep some stuff private, of course. The codes came out separately. Typically, when you get a game code early, typically you get the single player and the multiplayer at the same time. Wasn't so lucky this time around. They sent the campaign first because I will think they want people to get more time with the campaign. But unfortunately, they didn't send out the Wrecking Zone codes until the 13th. Mm-hmm. Or I think it was technically the 12th, but it was like late at night. And then they only had 2-hour blocks of time on the 13th before the embargo lifted this morning to play Wrecking Zone. And I was too busy playing the campaign to play any of the game modes. Well, they only had the Wrecking Zone for stress testing for Xbox Insiders. But I couldn't play. I wasn't home. I was working during the times they had the open tests for people that had early access. So I basically could not try out the multiplayer. I will be doing a comprehensive look. It may not be a review because doing a review on a multiplayer mode is not my kind of thing.
A little awkward, but more of a, hey, by the way, impressions type thing. Here's what you
Yeah.
can expect from the multiplayer. Okay, cool. So, and I'm going to clear something up before we dive into the deep meat of the questions here. You and I know this. A lot of people know this. John Lindemann from Digital Foundry mentioned this in his excellent video, which I highly recommend you guys go check out if you haven't yet. But the single player mode never had the destruction. That was always a multiplayer only thing. That's something a lot of people don't understand. And I want to make that perfectly clear right now before we go on. It's like, no, the multiplayer was always the only place that the destruction was going to happen. Now, did the destruction get downgraded in the multiplayer? Did the co-op change? Did how the multiplayer was going to work change? That's a completely different discussion. But it was never in the campaign in the first place. The campaign was developed by Sumo Digital, whereas the multiplayer Wrecking Zone was developed by Reagent before they went defunct, and Ruffian Games, who are now called Elbow Rocket. So just a bit of clarity before we move on.
Yeah, of course. It's also important to note as well that except with the footage from Comic-Con, which everyone knows was very rough, if you compare that footage to the footage we have now is staggeringly different. Prior to that Comic-Con footage, I don't think they released any campaign footage. The campaign was never really highly detailed. The focus was the multiplayer destruction because that was Jones, who was originally on part of the team before he sold Cloud Engine to Epic Games and then, of course, started working for Epic Games and left the project.
Right.
That was his big focus, was the cloud destruction, because that was his big push with his company. So that's important to note that there was at no point was there that scale of destruction promised for the campaign. And it was even clarified by Sumo Digital in 2017 that there would not be the massive world-breaking destruction. And honestly, for obvious reasons, I talked with a few people on Twitter about this. Oh, the big villain's in that tower right there. Okay, well, I'm just going to shoot a rocket launcher through the bottom and collapse the tower and game over.
Exactly. Or I lasered this structure. Man, that was cool. Then 5 minutes later, how on earth am I getting that agility orb? How am I going to do that? And I don't get me wrong. I want to see this kind of tech used in single player. I want to see it done, but you got to do it smartly because a game like Crackdown, it wouldn't really work. But let's dive into that. Let's talk about the actual game itself. The campaign mission structure. What's it like? What can you expect when you go in if it's someone like yourself who's never played a Crackdown game before?
Okay, so the easiest way I can explain this to you is, so when you're planked into Crackdown 3, you have 3 trees, essentially, that make up the Terra Nova Corporation. You have a tech firm, you have the militant firm, and then you have the chemical making firm. And you have to dismantle, you have to take out 2 underlings to get to the underboss that works under the main villain. And so how this works is you start by destroying or taking over objectives to weaken and expose the underlings so that they'll reveal themselves and you do a boss battle. It's very old school open world dismantle an organization. If anyone remembers, it's very similar to how I think it was Saints Row 2 worked when you were dismantling the gangs. You'd do a few missions, and then you'd have to deal with a boss. It's same kind of format, basically. So you're going to have those, and as you level up your agent, more side activities will be open to you, different races, because as your agility raises, more difficult races will be available. As your driving skill enhances, more car-based races will be available, and things like that.
Right. Okay, so what you described there, 2 underlings underneath a main boss, so to speak, that kind of reminds me of the Nemesis system. That reminds me of Shadow of Mordor, moving your way through the Orc Lieutenants. Would you say that's a good comparison?
That's a good comparison. Just imagine that with a lot less of the depth, obviously, because we've never seen anything quite like the Nemesis system. And but yeah, the Nemesis system is a great structure to compare it to, in the fact that you have to take out the underbosses to get to the big boss. You can, I think, technically skip doing some of the underbosses and fight the big boss, but then I think you have to fight the underlings on top of the big boss.
Okay, see, so that was actually going to be my next question. You got the jump on me there. They talked about how Sumo Digital talked about how when Breath of the Wild came out, they were actually very happy because it had similar, in a way, mission design in terms of being able to just go and, charge off, fight the main boss. You don't stand a chance, but sure, you can go do it. Is that the case? Would you say that's an accurate description? Can you just charge off and do whatever you want?
You can, to a certain extent. You can't beat the final boss, because the thing is they were really smart in how you can do this, but they push you in a certain direction, because it's like, well, yeah, you can go up this tower, but you need like level 4 agility would probably make that a lot easier. So why don't you go work on leveling that up by doing these other main objectives first, and then you're already prepared. It was actually very well balanced in what they had you doing to your level, in relation to how you leveled up. I was pleasantly surprised. And there was a really cool thing they had. I'm not sure if it was in previous Crackdown games or not. Longtime fans of the series will be able to tell me. But if you put your cursor over a map objective, whether it be a main activity, a boss, or whatever, it will give you a survival percentage chance based on your combat levels.
Okay, I like that. Sort
So
of
like
here's the odds going in type deal.
Yeah. So for example, when I unlocked the final boss, I still had 2 underbosses to take care of. So my survival chance, if I went at her first, was like 8%. But the underbosses were like 68, 72%. And the game almost guides you to do specific activities based off of that, because there was a enforcer base I got really frustrated with. I'm like, I just can't beat this. There's just too many heavily armored guys. So I started doing these other missions instead, got a homing rocket launcher, and then came back to that base and just walked right through it. I was like, oh, okay. So if you find yourself if you're playing Crackdown 3 and you find yourself getting stuck on a specific activity, go do a different one and then come back, and you'll probably find it'll work a lot easier.
Okay, gotcha. So that's interesting. That's very interesting to see. Let's talk about weapons. Can we, it's so overplayed, step up our boom? Can we get the tech to go with the talent? Are these cool guns?
All right, so I was kind of going in like, the thing is I like weird and zany guns. Like, and when I say I like weird and zany guns, I was one of those people that had like 1,000 kills in Saints Row with the dubstep gun.
Okay.
If it's gimmicky as hell, I love it. But with Crackdown, they really do this great system of you can carry 3 weapons with you. You have a primary, you have a secondary, and then I can't remember what the third one's called. But basically, you switch between the primary and secondary by tapping Y. And then press and hold Y will switch to your third weapon. And what the third weapon usually was it was like your ultra weapon that you want to keep for specific situations. I'm actually opening up the game now so I can give you a more in-depth list of the guns. But one of the first guns you get, it's called a PDW. Okay. And people are familiar with PDW if you've played any of the Call of Duty games. It's like an SMG. But in this game, the PDW is basically the Halo 3 assault rifle.
All right.
And
now you're talking.
Exactly. And it's really great because when you're at the low levels, this gun is great because if you burst it by like slowly pressing the trigger, not just holding down on it, you can burst down enemies really, really quickly with it. And it's a really good gun. And then you'll start finding like there's a decent revolver, there's a shotgun, and then you start getting into some of the more weird and zany like guns. And when I say weird and zany, is they're very situational based to how useful they can be. For example, there's the homing rocket launcher, which is pretty self-explanatory, but that early on is really great because most of your guns do like 100 damage a bullet, that kind of thing. And some enemies are resistant to bullet-based damage, so you have to use explosives. The homing rocket launchers, which is one of the guns you get super early on, it does 2,000 damage a shot right off the hop. And then as you level your explosive skill, it scales even more upon that. So I don't know. I never settled on one gun, which really says something for how they designed the weapons in this game. For the simple reasons, a lot of open world games, I find 2 or 3 guns I really, really love, and they suit every scenario.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Like, and I absolutely love it. But like, if I'm going back through certain games, I'll often find like, yeah, I'm gonna stick with this thing. This is the gun for me. I hear you. In open world games. I totally hear you. Usually, you find that one size fits all. So the fact that you have to swap them around sounds very interesting. We've got some questions in chat, if you don't mind me
Of course.
addressing those. So going from the bottom up, Fastback asks, "Do you have unlimited ammo?"
No, you do not. You actually you have to use supply pads that you'll find. They're almost everywhere around you. I think there's 50 scattered throughout the city. They resupply your ammo. You can pick up ammo off enemies, everything else, but they're pretty like giving with the ammo. Like, I think if I look at my screen right now, the PDW, which is your starter assault rifle, they give you 350 rounds for.
Okay. All right. So no, it's not unlimited ammo, but it's neither is going to be a big pain. This is not a survival game.
Yeah, no, it is. They balance it so that you always have enough ammo, but you still have to watch your ammo, especially when it comes to the explosive weapons.
Okay. All right. Pretty cool. Now, another question. Is the campaign co-op tethered? Now, I presume what he means by that is it like State of Decay 2 where you can only wander so far from each other?
Now, because it was review embargoed and I only knew a handful of people that were reviewing it, I never got a chance to try the co-op.
Okay.
So I can't comment on whether it's tethered, it's not tethered. I'll know by tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be playing it with a friend, and I will tweet out whether it's tethered or not or anything along that lines.
Okay.
I'd imagine there might be a little bit of a tether, but I can't imagine there being a huge one. But
okay. I can't. Don't take this with a grain of salt, but here's what I'll say. I know a bunch of people in New Zealand and Australia who are playing this game already. I know a bunch of people who reviewed it, and none of them have mentioned a co-op tether. So I will, take that for what you will. Doesn't mean there isn't one, but if there is, it's not like State of Decay 2. I haven't seen people mention it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see what else here. Chief Tommy asks, does the tethering mechanic work with NPCs? I'm not exactly sure 100%. Can you can you explain exactly what you mean, Chief? By that one,
if you're referring to the tethering mechanic as some of the gravity weapons that do cause tethering, yes, you do. If you shoot a anti-gravity ball into a group of enemies and there's civilians around, you will kill the civilians too. Okay. And by the way, the friendly militia that you work with does get really agitated and will send people after you if you kill too many civilians.
Okay, so there you go. Don't kill the civilians. You can kill the civilians. So there's that. All right, let's see here. What else? Do we have another one? He says, can you tether an enemy to a street light? I
actually don't know. I never tried that. That's a really good question. The most fun thing I ever did is getting my strength high enough that I could throw people and blow up vehicles by throwing dead bodies.
Okay, Chief, I'm going to take a wild guess and say yes. I'm just going to take a wild guess and say yes, simply because the graviton tether weapon that I've seen allows you to stick people to different surfaces or pull two enemies together. So I struggle to believe that you couldn't use it with
I'm looking at the graviton tether right now, and it says specifically in the weapon description, this is not a weapon I used a lot of. It says armored humans and robots such as logistics superloaders. So it's used for larger enemies, attached to two objects to tether and draw them together. Super fun to do with mechs, by the way.
Gotcha. There you go. Fastback wants to know, is the city fully open at the start?
Yes. You can go anywhere in the city. though depending on your level, I would not suggest it.
Okay. So standard open world fare in that case. Go wherever you want, but that's not a good idea to go wherever you. And a final question from Chief, it looks like, is the background better than Apex Legends? Is there a day-night cycle? Does the world never really stop? Is the AI better than Division 2 AI? That's like 4 questions at once, so I'll give you a minute.
Okay, so I'll tackle them one at a time. Is the background better than Apex Legends? Sure. Day-night cycle. This is something that's kind of weird with the game. So when you start out in the slums, it's like super dark and it's like super like depressing and everything else. And then like soon as I'm not sure if it was the time of day I hit or what, but when I hit the rich part of town, it was super bright. There was all these neon colors. It's really colorful. I'm not sure if that was a design choice to go, oh, this is how it feels to be like the regular people around here, but this is what the upper class feels like. But I have seen nighttime and both sides. I have seen daytime, but I don't know how the day-night cycle works precisely.
Okay.
It does have a cycle though.
So there is a day-night cycle, but it's not like real time or anything.
Yeah, it's not real time or anything like that. Does the world really never stop? No, does civilians go around? Like you could literally stand still and have the narrator yell profanity at you for standing still and just watch people go about their day. The AI better than Division 2 AI? I can't answer that because I was reviewing this game instead of playing the Division 2 beta. So that's
so there you go. All right.
So there's all those questions answered.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. So let's ask this. Terry Crews, right? Why would anyone not choose to play as Terry Crews? He's in the game, right? Commander Jackson is one of the agents. What possible reason do you have for picking one of the others?
All right. So speaking as someone who spent 80% of my time as Terry Crews and the other 20% of my time is Doc Cupcake for obvious reasons.
Of course.
There is reasons to play other agents, especially if you were about leveling up your skills faster. What I mean by this is specific agents level specific skills faster. So if I load up the game, so like I think Terry Crews' character learns explosives and firearm orbs faster. So he levels up those skills at a faster rate than other agents. So if I go here, Agent DNA, here we go. So yeah, so Terry, if you're playing Terry Crews, you get 10% in your strength experience and 5% explosives experience. But for example, I go to like Jeff Bartram, for example, he gets 10% explosives experience, but 5% strength experience. And then there's some that are like 10% driving experience and vice versa. So there's a reason if you're trying to level up specific skills, or you're finding, oh, I really wish my rocket launcher did more damage, you could switch agents to level that skill up faster.
Okay. So different. So it's not just cosmetics or, hey, I want to play as this character, or I want to look like this, for example. It's also different agents are going to level different skills faster.
Yeah.
So, okay, interesting. Shockingly enough, I imagine a lot of people who don't go for Terry Crews are going to go for the ones that level those agility orbs faster. I have a feeling.
Actually, I don't think. If I'm just going to oh yeah, there is one person there's one character specifically that gives you 10% agility experience.
There you go. All right, awesome. That's probably the one I'm going for, most likely then. Okay, let's see here. How's the audio design, in your opinion? How is the soundtrack, the sounds of the guns, things like that?
So the gun sounds are okay. They're not amazing. They're nothing to write home to mom about, but they're okay. Cars sound super tinny. The cars in general were disappointing. And one of the weirdest things about the sound design is when your character talks, he sounds far away. So it sounds like when Terry Crews is talking in character and it's not a cutscene or anything, you sound like you're talking to him through a tin can. I'm not sure if that was a design choice to be like a fourth wall break that you're playing a video game, or if it was just poor audio recording. I don't know what the choice was there. The main disappointing thing about Crackdown 3 is in terms of audio, and I cover this in my review, is you go through all this trouble of getting Terry Crews to voice the character that almost everybody's going to play. And he's probably got about 6 to 7 voice lines outside of cinematic ones, which is very, very underwhelming. Like, especially with how they promoted the game, with how blatant Terry was part of that game. But as Tommy said, he's expensive. I get that, but still, I feel like 7 voice lines was a little underwhelming. It's important to note too, every one of the agents has a separate voice actor.
Okay, so that is nice at least that they got them. It's not just he's the only one who speaks. Nevertheless, I'm going to co-sign what you said. Like, if you've got Terry in this much of the marketing, I mean, come on. He needs more than just a bombastic intro. You got to use him for more. You got to use it. I agree. That's a small thing, maybe in the grand scheme of things, but it is a thing. Now, here's a question that I got on Twitter before a couple of hours ago. It's about the co-op progression. How does the different world states work, to the best of your knowledge, in terms of whether you can play the game at the same time in co-op and progress at the same time? Can you have multiple campaigns going at the same time? How does all that work?
That's a really good question. Once again, didn't get a chance to do that, but I didn't get a chance to dive into the co-op. But how it's set up, like when you load up your game, you start the menu, you hit load, and it'll say enter worlds 1, and then there's enough slots for 5. Mm-hmm. So what I'm assuming it is that you hop in with a friend, you start a co-op campaign, and then it's your guys' progress together, and then when you guys exit that game, that's where you guys will pick back up in that world together.
Okay.
I don't think that you can't play with your friends together and then he leaves and then you keep going. I don't think that works. I don't think there's separate progress.
Okay. All right. So you think it's going to be that you start a world together and that world is that separate world away from either of your single player stuff. Yeah. But as long as you load in together, you can progress in it together.
Because it's important to note the single player campaign and co-op campaign are 2 separate menus. So that's what makes me believe. That's what I believe. Like I said, I'll know more tomorrow, but
okay. All right. Well, whenever you get more info on that, please let me know, because I did talk to a couple of people on Twitter who were very antsy about that. Understandably so. They don't want to have to play through it essentially twice. They want to either play it, by themselves or together. But just
for sure, because the biggest problem with co-op games is there's no standard where how co-op works for these games. Unfortunately, every game is different.
That was one of my biggest disappointments with State of Decay 2, was the fact that you essentially went into someone's world to help them. And it's like, okay, why can't I just have a world where it's me and my friends, maybe some of us log on sometimes, maybe some of us log on the other times, and we can all survive together. Like it's our commune that we've got going. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
So, sorry, not to talk about State of Decay 2, we're here to talk about Crackdown 3, but I'm hoping it's not like that. I'm hoping that it's not just drop in and then join your friend when he's doing this, like it's a dedicated save. If that's the case, that's a big thumbs up for me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. When can we expect your thoughts on the Wrecking Zone mode, on the multiplayer? When do you think we might have some idea of when that's coming?
Well, game goes live tonight, so I would probably say it's safe to bet that I'll have some impressions for the podcast on Saturday, and then a written piece for it probably somewhere between Sunday and Monday, most likely.
Okay, all right. So early next week, basically.
Yeah, basically. The way I look at it is I'm very particular about how much time I put into a game before there's a certain amount of hours I've put into a game before I'll do a quote-unquote impressions piece, and then a certain amount of time before I'd do a quote-unquote review. And I was not in my comfort level at this time to just, because I did play a little bit. I did sneak in some stress test time, but it was like half an hour. Like we're talking like the Xbox Insider once. It was for one mode for half an hour. And I kind of liked what I played, but no, it wasn't enough to give a concrete answer on this is good, this is bad, this is I don't like giving half. I don't like trying to fake through a reaction, be like, oh yeah, this was great, or oh yeah, this is terrible, without the amount of time put into it, of course.
That's fair. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Another question from Chief Tommy. He says, does the world seem 4 times bigger than Crackdown 2?
Once again, never played a Crackdown game, but what I will say is when I originally saw the size of the map, when you first open the map, the world looks really small for an open world map. And you're kind of like, oh, okay. Well, I was kind of like underwhelmed because I was like, this is a really small map. Like, what am I going to do? And then I came apparent later on that the verticality of that map makes it immensely larger than you initially thought. The whole center of the map is called the Citadel. And what it is it's the underbosses all have their own unique tower that's bigger than the next, with the biggest boss having the biggest tower. And the sheer verticality of this game is massive. And why I say that is I believe some of the buildings are like, we're talking in the miles tall.
Wow.
Like there's an achievement for using the agency spider, which is a vehicle that can climb up walls, which is really fun to screw around with. There's an achievement for driving it 3,000 meters up the side of a building to give you an idea of the sheer size of some of these buildings.
Okay, cool. And you know what that actually reminds me of? John Lindemann, in his video, talked about how the world was immensely more complex than even the tech demo. The infamous tech demo, he pointed out that people love to point out the destruction downgrade. He says the world is more complex than in that video. So I thought that was very interesting to hear. You know, if this is a lot of verticality, if there's a lot of platforming going on, lots of dashing and jumping, that sounds interesting to me. So
yeah,
that's good to hear.
And like I said, every boss has a tower, so it's really cool. So you have to go through like a massive tower of platforming and killing massive amounts of enemies at the same time,
right?
To then do a face-off at the top of the tower with the boss. It's a really cool mechanic.
Sort of storming the castle. So
yeah, every boss battle felt like you were storming the castle per se.
Okay, interesting. We got another question from Chief Tommy. He says, do captains and lieutenants start retaliating against your efforts as you progress? Like, do you randomly get jumped?
That would be great, but no. As you demolish things, you get angry messages about, why are you destroying my stuff? The lieutenants and underbosses won't make an appearance until you 100% control their objectives, and they will then appear at a pre-coordinated location where you have to battle it out with them.
Okay, all right. So nothing like the Nemesis system in that regard. In terms of orcs randomly jumping you as you round the corner, because.
It'd be cool, but no, that's not in this game.
Okay, all right. Sucks to hear, but there you go. Well, I have to be perfectly honest with you, dude. I'm fresh out of questions. I think we've done a good overview. We talked about the gameplay. We've talked about, your opinions on stuff. You've already got your review out there. There's a link in the description. People haven't read that yet. They need to. We're going to answer the co-op related questions as efficiently as we can tomorrow when you've got some time with that. So unless there's anything else outstanding from chat, I see Fastback asked, curious when Crackdown 3 will get the multiplayer update. Yeah, I am too. I'm hoping that's really soon, because I got to be honest, like that ain't cool. Not being able to party up with people in for Wrecking Zone, like, I'm sorry, this ain't it. Ain't it. I'm not on board with that.
I'm gonna throw out. Keeping in mind this is an opinion from the emails I got from PR and the times I got codes delivered to me, I expect that multiplayer update to be sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they had the campaign fleshed out, but they were really scrambling with the multiplayer to get it out in time.
Okay.
And with it being a separate download from the game and everything else, and to be really honest with you, one of the most impressive things about Crackdown 3 is the fact they don't need to do a launch day patch on this game because it works straight out the box. There's no frame rate drops. It's locked 30 frames per second. Would be cool for it to be more than 30 frames per second. Yeah, but it's nice having a game that doesn't dip and everything else. Just that locked 30 during no matter how much destruction or how much stuff you're blowing up or how many enemies on screen. That's one of the best aspects of the game.
Yeah, that's not, even if it's, on the Xbox One X version, that's not to be taken lightly. The fact that this is Unreal Engine 4, the game looks gorgeous with the HDR and the neon lights and the bright colors and the purples and greens. I noticed a lot of that, a lot of purple and a lot of green in this color scheme, and I really like it. The vibrant comic book style splash art, but the frame rate never dips, and that's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. That's worth commending.
Because if anyone wants like technical in-depth information, go watch the Digital Foundry one.
Yeah, seriously, I can't recommend that video enough. John Lemon did an excellent job.
But the HDR in this game cannot be understated. If you have an Xbox One X and you have HDR enabled, it is insane. The colors and everything else. And all it does is make me want an Xbox One X enhancement patch for Sunset Overdrive.
Good Lord. Why'd you have to bring that up? Because now it's not going to happen, likely. Dang it, dude. At least we got this. At least we got this kind of HDR.
Exactly.
I'm hesitant about even installing this game on my PC because I'm like, yeah, I'll be able to get it at a high frame rate, but that HDR, man, it's that HDR.
Actually, the key important note: if you're installing it on PC, and for anyone that's listening on PC, if you have an Xbox and a PC, just play it on your Xbox because it's capped. It's locked 30. You can't change the frame rate on PC.
Pardon me?
Yeah, no. Several PC players have reported that 30 FPS is locked and it's unchangeable because it's a play anywhere title, so it has to run the same performance for everybody.
Okay, I imagine that's going to change very, very soon. That's not going to go over well at all. But again,
that'll go over with the PC gaming credit. That will go over as well as the Epic Games Store. To be brutally honest with you,
yeah, that's not going to go over well. Not happy about that. But okay, I was going to play it on my Xbox anyways, regardless. Yeah. In closing, as we sort of wrap up here, Fastback actually makes a very good point. He says, hopefully Xbox will continue to support Crackdown 3 with free DLC, updates like Sea of Thieves. But since Sumo is not an Xbox studio, not sure how much support ? Yeah, let's address the elephant in the room and let's be brutally honest here, Fast. I wouldn't expect the same kind of support Sea of Thieves has gotten. Okay, I would
be real with you. Even if it was an Xbox studio, they launched this game. I basically think, not being condescending to developers, I'm pretty sure everyone involved is just going to wash their hands of this now.
Everyone's just sort of happy that this finally came out in a polished state and is a polished game.
Yeah, for sure. And that was my biggest complaint in closing with how much flack this game has got. Is the game uninspired and kind of old generation style and how the world's built? Yes. But performance-wise, it's probably one of the first games I've ever had the pleasure of reviewing that was an open world based game where it worked right out the box. Great. Like, I was going to make a comparison to Just Cause 4 in my review, and then I remembered the fact that no one could get above 28 FPS on it and that half of the graphical assets were missing when the game launched.
Yeah, Just Cause 4 might not be the best example there. So, yeah, have fun, but don't expect much. I do think we could probably get some multiplayer DLC, maybe a couple of new maps. new skins, stuff like that. I think that kind of stuff is.
Oh yeah, I definitely
I think we'll see something like that.
I think you're going to see some like Xbox themed agent skins and so some like free DLC stuff, because that's kind of the mantra that Microsoft does with these games. And just because the game's in Game Pass, I do think there will be post-launch content to draw people in again.
Sure,
I just don't
expect Sea of Thieves level Rare doubling down, reorganizing into 6 teams and getting new content out every month. Like
never, ever expect any game to receive the amount of support that Sea of Thieves has, because Sea of Thieves, once again, without branching into a different topic, Sea of Thieves support level is beyond pretty much anything I've seen in the industry in the past decade in terms of support.
It is very odd, and in a great way, in a fantastic way. Rare has done a great job giving free DLC upon free DLC. But yeah, that about wraps up our Crackdown 3 talk. If you're listening to this later and you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment. We will happily answer them. And by we, I mean Nick. And we will happily be exploring the co-op stuff, like I said before. And by we, I mean Nick. And we're going to get those answers to you as quickly as we can regarding that. And yeah, that's all I got, man. Thanks for answering my questions.
Perfect. Thank you for everyone that showed up. I hope I was able to answer your guys' questions. And of course, if you're on the fence about Crackdown 3, buy the $1 Game Pass. Give it a try. If you don't like it, no money lost. And it's absolutely worth a try if you're a huge fan of sandbox games. And I'm a huge fan of these old school sandbox games. So I absolutely enjoyed myself. I hope everybody that's excited for this game enjoys themselves. And of course, do not forget to tune into the Gaming Perspective podcast this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, because I will not be slandering Anthem, and we'll be talking about a bunch of really cool Switch announcements. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up. Don't forget to share the video with your friends and everything else, because YouTube hates content creators, and when you like a video, it doesn't show up on Twitter or Facebook or any form of social media anymore. So share the video out. Any support is appreciated, and thank you guys for tuning in to our Crackdown 3 Q&A, and we will see you guys Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.